If I had to put a finger on when her career really started to take off, it was when she began to do educational outreach activities. Mary learned a lot about atlatls, textiles, native plants, and so on. In some ways, she surpassed those who taught her. As a Native American, Mary offers a distinct perspective on the types of ancestral lifeways taught by the Office of Archaeological Studies. But what truly sets Mary apart, and you'll see this in action today, is her ability to relate to people and tell a story. It's not uncommon for a crowd to gather around Mary to hang on her every word. The emphasis had always been on childhood education, but there was more engagement with Native American communities. Mary, as well as the others, deserves a great deal of credit for this. This is the reason that this is an award-winning program. To say we will miss Mary is an understatement, but the legacy of what she and others before her built lives on in the school at the Office of Archaeological Studies, the state office, and has a bright future. So I'd like to welcome Mary Weahkee, and she's also brought her mother here today. So we're glad to have her join us today too.
Mary Mota Weahkee. And to my mother, Nina Mota, is from Santa Clara Pueblo. She is my, I always call her my straight man. She never laughs at any of my jokes, but so anyway. And then my father, he's gone. He's taken his journey. He was the son of the first Comanche chief for the Comanche people. He served as our chairman for over 8 years, won several battles for us, and I just got his briefcase, and it's an amazing briefcase. And I took it to a talk I had to do before the Comanche people, and it in itself, I thought of, if it could talk, how many trips to Washington, D.C., how many trips to other controversial issues within the tribes here in the state of New Mexico. Land rights, water rights, everything, mineral rights, everything you could think of, he fought for. He was also a minister. So he started 3 Methodist churches in Oklahoma, and we try to attend all of them. We're like, me and Mom, we're here, okay, then bye, we're going to the next one, bye. So now here I am in another church, another beautiful, and hearing Reverend Judy's words, they touch close to home, because we were also part of the Relocation Act. So they plucked us, plucked me from my grandma and grandpa in the Pueblo, and we ended up in Los Angeles, in a place called Downey, California. There was hardly anybody of color. And we're going down the street, and I'm like, and we barely spoke English. We spoke more Tewa than anything else. And my father worked for NASA, and he worked on all the wiring systems for all the Apollo capsules and the Saturn missiles. So we were always at the base. I didn't realize we were meeting all the astronauts till I got to be an old lady. And I remember that guy, Buzz Aldrin, So here we were, we're looking at the moon rock in this big glass case, and I'm all like, that just looks like a piece of rock from Los Alamos. So there's all these things that happen, and as a little kid, you're just bouncing around. You don't realize what kind of position you're in until you're in it. But I did work in the back here, and it was really neat. And one of the things that I looked forward to was when the kids would throw toys over the wall. I found beans, corn, and squash. It was so funny, and a lion. Then I would knock on the door and I would say, I think these belong to the little preschool upstairs. And they would all look over at me and we would all wave at them and, and then they get scared and jump back, But I had a pleasure meeting a lot of the members from the church because they were curious about what was going on back here. And we uncovered the original Presbyterian orphanage, or sort of a school.
Yeah, mission school.
It was a mission school for girls. It started off as girls, and then later on they incorporated the little boys. So as you're digging, you find small crosses, insignias from the church, little metal pieces, and you just think about those little children that were here playing in the yard. And it was a fascinating building structure, comprised mainly of limestone, huge limestone blocks, as big as that table. And how they managed to get them in here was incredible, because the quarry is in Laney. And these were massive stones, but the structure had, what we wanted to do was try and give you guys the rock so you could use it in your landscape, but that never materialized. I think Coronado Scrap said, "It's ours now." So that's what happened to a lot of the historic objects that were there. And I did the Civic Center Ogopoge, like it mentions in the article. Ogopoge means the white shell people. So Olivella shells, which come from the coast of California and the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, how did they end up here? Who's walking? Who's trading? Who's bringing all these items in pre-horse? Because that contact period went all the way from Paleo, all the way through Basket Maker 3, all the way to the Mexicans, all the way to the Texans, and then all the way to the Spaniards, and now, So we were digging through all these levels of this state alone, and then I got to do the fort across the way. I did the testing and the exploration of the Georgia O'Keeffe. The museum's gonna be across, did the trenching, and that was fascinating. We did find a Pueblo structure that was probably just a housing unit that they refilled with a lot of the material from the officers' quarters. So I know it's officers' quarters because there was good champagne, good whiskey, and so and the enlisted men, I don't even want to tell you what they were eating and drinking. So there was so many things that happened just under your floor that you're standing on. It's just, this history is just ongoing and ongoing. One of the things I'm doing is I didn't join, I got pulled into a group of archaeoastronomers. So it's interesting to look at the cosmology of a Pueblo structure, and there's only one 90-degree angle set up in all of them. So far we've done Hovenweep, Lowry, Yellow Jacket. These are all in Colorado, right? And also Escalante Pueblos. And we're basing them on the horizon lines, solstice markers, winter, spring, summer, all these. We stand out there with telescopes, and we're also aligning star alignments. And everybody will say, well, everything lines up with the stars, but not the 90-degree angle that's based in every village that I've looked at. We've also looked at, we were allowed to do photogrammetry at Lowry, Pueblo, which is where the Pueblo story of the first beginnings of the Kachina religion, because it was not always Kachina religion. They were migrating from the south and the north and coming in, and when the Hopi are coming through, they're leaving Montielban. Montielban is in south of Oaxaca. And their oral histories from the elders are telling me that They left Monte Alban because of the religious oppression, just like all the Christians that came here ended up here because they wanted to practice freely and be happy and, you know, be connected to their Creator. So the same happened to them. And so they're coming up through, and they bring with them those symbols of the twin war gods and the rain gods and you know, Tlaloc and Quetzalcoatl and all these other effigies with them. So here, we're in a 35-year drought, we're desperate, we keep praying, nothing, we keep praying, nothing's happening, you know. So here's this new religion that comes in. And instead of, you can see it in the modification of the Pueblo structure. If you've never, how many have been to Lowry? Nobody. It's in Cortez, Colorado.
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah. You can see the, like when you go to Chaco, you see 3 occupation periods based on the architecture. So you can see, you know, how the chinking gets, in the beginning it's not so, it's kind of ugly, and then it comes to these really modified wall structures, and then there's veneers, and then, you know, they get really, really fancy, and then it goes back, that technology is lost, and it goes back to being this really simple round rocks being plastered in. So that's how we're basing time periods by the occupation. So in Lowry, you see a pit house that gets modified to hold these Kachina effigies. And they're not how you think they are today, with legs and arms and posing. We call them, there's the little Hopi have a joke, you know, those are action figures now. You know, so before that, they were small, flat pieces of cottonwood. And why cottonwood root? If you've ever seen a cottonwood tree root, it's peripherous, it absorbs color. So once you paint it, that paint does not fade away. And they're combining those mineral pigments and also plant pigments with yucca water. My favorite plant on this earth, yucca. I'm obsessed with it, it's insane. But so when we started looking at pigments through at the Office of Archaeological Studies on a machine called an oxygen plasma machine that was invented by Marvin Rowe, a nuclear physicist who's retired but still working over there. I got out. Marvin is able to date these pigments based on, you know, these O2 readings, and it's fascinating because there are pre-radiation levels here on Earth. Everything before the nuclear facilities get built, we're looking at everything before all that. Once the nuclear bombs go off, plants, animals, gases, soils become contaminated with that 1940 footprint. And that's what cause sometimes you pick that up. In anything we date after that time period. So it's an amazing process. There's only 3 machines in the world, and Marvin has built all 3 of them, and 2 of his students, one in Hawaii and one, I want to say University of Connecticut, but I could be wrong. But so working with all these new venues with determining how the religious sites were found or formed. In Escalante, they test 3 holes before they choose the 4th one to say, this is the one that manifests the most energy, this is the one that is giving the most healing properties. So they kind of fill these others in. And where that main kiva is, the 90-degree wall is just right next to it, toward the west. And it lines up with a landscape that has a gun notch. And so the sun rises, and then it sets in 10-day increments. So to the Pueblo people, when you have ceremonies, we don't have a calendar per se. but we use the Catholic calendar on our feast days, so we have our feast day every day, the same month, the same day. But when we do other dances and other things that apply, even the Comanches and other tribes, we're using those cycles of the sun and the moon. So it's usually 10 days. So the first 2 days, you have to gather everything. 3, 4, 5, you're spreading the word. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the fours, numbers of 4, sacred numbers. They better be ready for their ceremony. And I mean feathers, hair, sticks, plants, everything you can think of for different ceremonies. Just like, you had your communion biscuits. I like that it's gluten-free. I cracked up to myself. We have had to make so many changes in our world, right? And then COVID, and I'm doing Zoom with the church. I'm like, wow, okay. So we're adaptive, and that's what I'm seeing in these changes of religion, changes of construction, changes of controversy now with the seasons. So what's going on is we are 1 month behind. And that's why, God, it should have been monsoon already. How come it's not? My tomatoes aren't growing. What's wrong with them, Or, it's really strange how the seasons are changing so rapidly, but the people are watching the constellations. We're also doing archaeoastronomy. So we're giving different views of how the Pueblo were looking at constellations within their own systems. And I'm talking about South America all the way up here to North America. So one of the biggest, of course, Orion's belt, right? The Hopi designed their village exactly to the constellation, the degree, everything. If you were to see the maps from Dr. Richard Ailing's observances, he's an astrophysicist for NASA. He is a teacher out at Arizona at ASU. So he's online with a lot of the work we've been doing. And I'm sort of new with them, and I always tell them, this is my breed and this is you guys, because I'm with 3, astrophysicists out in the field. And we spend the night out there, the cold nights, we bear the hot, just so that we can watch everything all night long. And then we watch the sunrise, and we look at the horizon lines, and we count, and we watch, and we photograph. Thousands and thousands of photographs. And the computer puts it all together in 7 minutes. You're like, really? So it's fascinating to see where the people were as far as cosmology. So then I'm going to go back to Lowry, where the Kachina effigies are placed in the walls. They built a larger kiva toward the north, and it's probably from this edge of the table to the lady in the green blouse all the way around, and it's huge. And when you look down in it, there are 2 Kachinas facing each other. All this time, these other archaeologists thought that those were foot drums and water basins, but they stand this high off the floor, from the base of the floor up, so it's 6 tiers high of rock. And I was all like, hey, there's a north-facing Kachina, a south-facing. It's like our side, north and south side, right? Winter, summer, squash, turquoise. So here's these 2 Katsina down in the bottom, and they're both in motion, and they're looking at each other. But there's a huge dance way in between them. But it is not a kiva because there was never a roof piece put on it. It is an amphitheater. And on the outside, they built a space that's like maybe, I'm a volleyball player, so I base everything on that 30 by 30 court. So 60 by 30. So 10, 20, like from here, like 20 feet, they built up the sides. And can you imagine how many baskets of dirt and compaction they had to do? And this was so that people from the villages could sit outside that amphitheater. So we're trying to figure out, if we create a sound, how far will that resonate? And looking and studying the cosmology and the direction, it will go all the way to Mesa Verde from where that is. And it goes to Bear's Ears. It just channels all the way across this whole flat horizon line. From there, from this location, you can see every Weahkee, every substantial village that was practicing Weahkee. They're looking at Copernicus. It lines up perfect with the windows in Weahkee. So it's amazing to go back, Creator puts you where you're supposed to be, so he keeps moving me toward, more study with these astrophysicists. And I'm really, and in turn, I take it back into the Pueblo systems. Remember, are we still doing these things, or are we still in observance of some of these? We've got the Ring of Fire coming, right, on the 14th. Do you know what the Ring of Fire is? The solar eclipse.
Yes.
And it will be visible here in New Mexico. We had Saturn, the closest Saturn ever got to us, that was about 3 weeks ago. You could see the rings with just your plain binoculars. So all these things are happening above us. So they're symbols, and they're either warnings, or we better plant our cotton early. There's so many things going on. A lot of villages are not allowed to view these sights in the sky. They will literally go in and shut all their windows and not come out at all. So they store food before they go on. Like Zuni is not allowed to be out on full moons or view these signs from the heavens. So when I went to Comanche Nation, who at one time were sun worshipers, because they're Uta Aztecan, and they're part of the Hopi, we're really close to Hopi. We're cousins. And they have completely lost their, I don't want to say, their way of the time that they lived down in the South. Their religion that was practiced down in the South. And the same thing, they were searching for a new religion just like everybody else. So they practiced bear dance, they practiced ghost dance, they practiced, and what they were looking for was to be able to communicate with Creator directly. And the Lapan gave them the peyote. So now they could chew this plant, and then they say, we don't pray to God, we talk directly to Him in these meetings. I have not been to a peyote meeting. My grandfather, my dad. My dad was also a deacon, and then you have my grandfather, who was a minister in the Methodist Church, but yet they were both peyote men. So how do you juggle these two worlds? And then you have mother, whose father was the head of the Clown Society. He was a powerful koshari. And how did he juggle Catholicism by being an altar boy to the end of his days? He would handle everything there at the church, and then come home and put his, dress up and go down into the kiva. And I was all like this little kid going, wow, what are we? I'd smell like Jergens one day and smell like the earth the next. So there was, so I think to appease both worlds, or how you're going to deal with what you do in the outside world, it just became an acceptance, right? So doing archaeology and telling the village, guess what I'm doing? I'm looking up the ancestors. And at first, it was a bad thing, but I convinced them that we've lost these little pieces of history, and we've lost these little aspects of our beginnings. They all knew about yucca sandals, they all knew about turkey feather blankets, they all knew about using yucca as a fiber for string and clothing, but they'd never seen it. So I introduced it back into not the older school. I went that straight into the 3-year-olds. I went to the Head Start program. So I kept working with them as they grew. I went to their classrooms with them. So I went Head Start, elementary, mid school, high school, and now I'm in. Some of them are in university and taking interest in doing archaeology and doing conservation and preservation in their own villages. Not just my village. I went out into Caris, Jemez, San Juan, Santa Clara, Tesuque, Nambe. You know, I was hitting every Native American school that I could before I left the OAS. And I went off grants that the Museum of New Mexico gave me, that everything had to be based on Native American children. And taking back, I teach what is called ancient lifeways. So since I was a lithic analyst, I had to learn how to flint map. So one of my big studies was ancient weaponry, atlatls, where the bow came from, how it was manufactured, what were the better church, how to make sinew bowstrings, and I can go out and cut a tree and make an expedient bow out of anything in your garden. I was eyeballing your. I said, well, I can harvest that right now. I'm notorious for doing things like that. Is it too long? Am I going too far?
Well, we have lunch ready and we don't want it to get cold. We know
we'll
you're
eat.
all
So
hungry.
eat and I'll keep talking.
And I would like Judy and Mary to be first in line, so that then when Mary comes, she can eat. Mary, please take your mother too, first in line. And then as we finish eating, maybe we can go over individually and ask questions.
So sorry about it.
No, that's okay. It's just so fascinating. It's hard to stop for a minute.
Sorry.
Please,
All right.
Judy, would you and Mary and your mother please start the line and
Come on, Mom.
thank you.
And why I buried the bones from last year was so that I could teach them how to make tools. And there's so many tools that you can get from one bison collection. So the men were grossing out more than I guess I'm used to digging. So they got to the top of the bones, and I jumped down there like a crazy lady with my trawl, and I started, here's some here, let me give you that shovel. I'm throwing them these bones up. What are we gonna do with them? I said, lay them out so I can see which ones. I wasn't sure because I don't know the soils in Oklahoma very well. I know these soils here and how long it takes for decomposition and what beetles and ants do to it. And so out there, I made sure that it went down at least 4 feet. And because there was not that much rain, which was good, because I think if it had rained the way it does out there, we would have still been juicy. But they weren't. They were nice and dry, and they just needed to be washed off. And I stunk to the high heaven, and I had to get in the car with my mom, and I said, Mom, I stink. It's all right. I always stink. You're used to it. And so as soon as I finished putting the last bone, which was the bison skull, out, I looked up, and here come the 2 new bison, which was unreal. And so that went down, and I went to the pen and I talked to them, and I said, I know you're giving your life for a good purpose. It will feed the elders. You're going to feed the peyote people. You're going to bring life to a lot of the people who have never tasted you. You grew up eating grass, and the grass was nourished with the sun, and the sun brings life. and you'll bring new life to all the children and the elders that will partake. And I walked away, and the men were like, "Were you talking to them?" I said, "Yeah." You know, they hear you. They understand what you're saying. You know, no matter what language, I feel that they understand their purpose here. And the next morning, we get up at before sunrise, and we pray for the life of these animals that we're going to use. And I bring out the elders and the peyote men, and then we sing the Buffalo Kill song, and it's so beautiful, and it's happening right when the sun's coming up. We have hunters that mock the original kill with the lance, and then the hunter with the rifle comes in. So we're real careful about how they're taken out and who gets to shoot who has the honor of the kill. And this year it was an 82-year-old Comanche man. So for him to have the honor to take out a bull, a Comanche, you know, and he did it, you know, he took it out with one shot. And for the first time in the history of the Comanche Nation, not even in written history books, is there anyone that mentions a woman killing a bison. But there were always women hunting and at war times fighting alongside the men. And so we had a woman who was a veteran from the Army, and she had children, and she was a sharpshooter, and we chose her to take the second buffalo out, the second bull. So after they had taken it out, we wait till there's no more movement, and I'm the first one to go in, and it sounds terrible while you're eating. My dad used to call these after dinner stories. He would tell terrible stories. And so you have to slit the throat to bleed the animal. So we did that, and I drink the blood of the bison, and that's what the women did back in when they would have the bison hunts. So as I'm drinking the blood, I can hear whoa. And not just the women, it was the men doing that. Can you see what she's doing? But and then I have to explain to them, about that animal and why I did it, and taking in, because what I'm going to do with him, I need to share how he feels, and that's the closest thing you can get to being a part of that animal. And I put my forehead against his and thanked him for his life on both animals. So then I turn around, and pretty soon, the brave ones are coming up, and they're doing the same thing. And there were, in the first round, there were like 300 women. I didn't know there was going to be that many women to show up to help butcher. And then we had the rehab center with the young men and women that are troubled in life, and all of them were crying. So they must have been touched through spirit, through Creator, and I let them, they're not allowed to handle knives or anything like that, but I let them. I gave them that honor to help. Maybe it'll help them heal. Maybe they'll go back and think about what, sometimes you get caught up in that world, and it might have opened their minds and their hearts at the same time, because they're disconnected, head from heart. So I teach the women using stone tools as well as iron tools, and I purchased and I had a replica scalping knife, and I had an original scalping knife. that I used to cut this bison open. And I handed the replica scalping knives to the elder women. I gave them as gifts. And to the little girls, I had knives that I bought that were hunting knives. And I said, Comanche women never leave without a knife. We carry it with us all the time. You never know when you're going to see roadkill hum on. How many U-turns that woman has done with me. I said, that's why they make the steering wheel round, Mom, so I can go back and get that bird or porcupine or whatever I see on the road. So here were all these little girls carrying meat, not afraid of it, you know, and then the young men learning how to take the tongue out of the bison head. And then I showed them the skull from last year. And I said, and this is what people hang for ceremonies. And I explained everything that I could and how they were cutting the meat, what processing looks like. And the next morning, I got to see them again because I gave a talk on Comanche rock art and Aboriginal trails of the people that they've forgotten a lot. It's an incredible loss of history. I didn't realize when I looked up there were over 300 Comanches in that room. Young, old, 2 busloads of students from 2 different schools in that Lawton, Oklahoma area where we've been, where they put us on that reservation. So it was really neat. And then I talked a little bit about the bison kill, and then we killed that. We did over 3,000 pounds of meat in record time. We were done by 1 o'clock. Packing, wrapping, you know, storaging, reburying the bones again to take to the schools to teach them how to use for tools. And so I was happy. I mean, to everything, the guts, we used everything. So you guys should like menudo, man. There's nothing like it. Buffalo menudo. And they at this lecture, I talked about rock art and how I've been trailing the Comanche from down south all the way to the Baja, all the way up into San Diego, California, up the coastline into Canada, into Wyoming, back down into Oklahoma, Louisiana, Texas, and of course Durango, Chihuahua, all those Sonoran desert locations. And Sister Pima, your family left some amazing rock art in those locations. So I was able to share this information with them. Some of the elders knew stories but didn't know anything further than that. So Creator is sending me to, I want to say re-educate, because I took 2 busloads of seniors out to the Salinas missions and explained the salt trade between the Abo, Pueblo, and Comanche Nation, and how they would meet on that Kiowa grasslands and trade meat and salt. Salt was like money. Now we all got blood pressure from it. So the salt was used for preservation, purification, keeping the boogeyman away. There's all kinds of uses for it, mainly for like a feel-good, like a sensory kind of feeling in salt. So this, when I was talking with these elders, and I always tell my Mom, how come when I finish with them, I feel like I'm their elder? Because they had lost. That boarding school erased a lot. And I spoke to a gentleman who's a principal named Ron T. Burgess, and he was a principal out here in Albuquerque at the APS school systems. And he was having dinner with me, and he says, Mary, I didn't really want to share this because I was kind of embarrassed. He says, but when I was little, we were told not to speak back, even though we understood the language. we're more allowed to speak back because our grandparents didn't want us to have that accent. And I crack up because people will say, you don't have that accent, you know. And I said, well, I grew up in Downey, California. Of course I don't, you know. And he said they were afraid that what happened to them would happen to him. And he's my age. Can you imagine still having that fear? And he says, we didn't even know we were Indian. And now it's a big deal to be Indian, you know? And I says, well, I'm sorry, Ron, that happened. I think it depends on the individual how you accept yourself being, you know. I didn't have my mom, her people know songs that are 5,000 years old. Once in a while, one of those 5,000-year-old songs come in and we gotta learn a new dance. We're like, what? You know, and it's like, okay, what song is that? You know, because the Tewa, the words are so old. We grew up with Tewa that was mixed like slang. It's not pure. She still speaks pure Tewa. Her sister was one of the last pure Tewa speakers. So everybody's coming to her now. How do you say this, Auntie? How do you say this, Grandma? You know. So to see the Comanche elders, where half of them aren't even speakers, you know, half of them don't know their old religion, half of them don't know why we use Oshan, or why we use mint, horse mint, or why do we do this? And Creator sent me back to reteach, and I'm grateful for it. And you know, and I share this story because keep us in prayer. And you guys are powerful prayer people here. I feel it. And you know, I'll leave you with that. Any questions? Hey.
Are you going to talk about the turkey blanket?
Oh, Tuesday, I'll be at the shawl, the prayer shawl.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to bring the turkey feather blanket. The new turkey feather blanket was 6 feet by 2 feet. And I had to make it for Tom Hanks. And it's for a movie called Here, H-E-R-E, and it will be out in 2024. And it's a Disney production. And he's so tall, you know, it had to wrap around him. So the movie here is about time jumping. So he gets buried as an Indian, a Caddo Indian in the East Coast, because that's where they originated from. And then he jumps again, and he's wearing the rabbit fur blanket, which was 6 feet by 4 feet. And he's walking around with that. And I said, God, Tom Hanks will play anybody, even an Indian. So it's sort of like a sci-fi kind of jump kind of thing, but keep your eye out on it. But I've gone Hollywood. This turkey feather has taken me on a journey that's incredible, and it's not. So the first blanket was what, 15 to 17,000. This one was a lot more. It had to be done in less than 3 months. I couldn't feel my fingers for at least 2 months. They were so numb.
Will you tell them about the website that shows you making it if they haven't seen that?
I don't even know.
I actually have the video on our website.
Okay,
You
great.
can follow the post about today's luncheon. There's 2 videos of her, one doing yucca sandals and one doing a feather
Right.
blanket. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's stuff that everybody's forgotten, but everybody wants one, or you know, it's just like, okay, I'll teach you, and then they don't show up. So I'm gonna bring that shawl that we made for Tom Hanks to the on the prayer shawl, because it is a shawl, you know. And since Tom Hanks touched it, you know. So that was the new turkey feather blanket. But it's a lot of work, and I plucked and cleaned, I think 86 birds altogether for both blankets. And I didn't waste anything. We're good at not wasting, right? Save the bones, make tools. With the turkey, his wings, the wing bones became flutes, and then the leg bones became needles, and then the rib bones became small bead ornaments. And the feathers that were minor feathers that I couldn't use all went to Hopi, Zuni, and Acoma for their prayer sticks. So nothing got wasted. And now it's like everybody thinks I have feathers coming out of my feathers. You know, San Ildefonso, we need about 2 more buckets. And I'm like, you got a whole mountain, go up there. Because I went to Fort Sill and hunted those during the spring and fall turkey hunt seasons, and asked the soldiers if I could pluck his birds. I said, can I pluck your bird? And then a game and fish helped me out with poached birds. I got to have the whole bird. So it depends, you know. But I might have to put in for a hunt this year. Who knows? But Tuesday I'll be here with that blanket so you guys can see it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Mary.